Hello, in this video I'm gonna tell you 10 key differences between macOS and Windows. These differences are gonna be like the most common ones, some of the most important ones that both non-advanced and advanced users will notice. And the first thing that you see as you open your laptop is the interface design. macOS features a cleaner and just you can see this is the MacBook that I have right here. It features a cleaner and minimalist design. It doesn't look too cluttered. Of course, you can make it cluttered if you want, but you don't need to. Whereas Windows is more customizable. It has way more customization options. You can get apps that will change or alter the way your system looks. You can change how your taskbar looks. You can change how your start menu looks. You can change all the colors across the system. Of course, on macOS you can also change some colors across the system. You can change the wallpapers and stuff. But I think that Windows, not only I think that, Windows just has way more customization options since it doesn't really verbote apps from changing the system as much. So if you install classic shell app, then you'll have your start menu altered and it won't look like in Windows 11 or 10. Instead, you can make it to look like in Windows 7 or maybe in Windows XP, who knows. Now, app installation. So on macOS, you install apps from App Store, and also you can install from browser using DMG or PKG formats, whereas on Windows you use Microsoft Store, and from browser you can get exe or MSI files. And I'm gonna give you my opinion on that. So both of these, you won't really notice that as much, especially if you are like an advanced user and you just know how to install apps, then probably you just don't care about it. It doesn't really make any difference. But if you're not experienced, then I think that the macOS experience is a bit cleaner, especially with the DMG file, since you just open the DMG file and it opens like a disk image on your desktop. So you can open that and you'll probably have an app in here, like a file with the app extension at the end. And what you can do with that, most probably in that DMG file, within it you'll also have the applications folder shortcut, so you can simply drag it and it's installed, because you don't need to install it. You can just copy the app. It's all you need on macOS. And it's worth noting that you need to remember to eject that image file. Of course, you can leave it, and after a restart you won't really notice it, but because it'll be ejected itself. But it's for a cleaner look and just to not have too much like disks shown in your Finder, then you'll probably want to eject it yourself. Whereas on Windows, on exe files, you just need to click on next, agree to some things, and it'll also get installed. But not always shows, like it doesn't always show where you want it to. And it's not as intuitive if you want to uninstall that program, because sometimes you'll find it in control panel, sometimes don't. And if you want to find like the source of the file, if you want to go into that file and maybe edit something, then you need to go to like this C drive and find some other stuff. Like there are program files x86 and program files, and you need to guess which one the app is in. And on macOS it's always in the always in the applications folder, unless you've changed it. And as a bonus, I'm gonna tell you two things in the app installation, because I've just reminded myself two things. So the first one is you don't create shortcuts on desktop on Mac. Of course you can, but it's not something that is often done. You usually just go to the Launchpad. Let me show you that. If I take that MacBook, you can do that on MacBooks, iMacs, or whatever. You can either go into this Launchpad icon, click on it, and you'll see all of your apps from the applications folder, and you can open any of those. Or you can pinch with 4 fingers. It'll also open the Launchpad. So I think it's pretty convenient. Whereas on Windows, you can also open apps from the menu start, but I don't think that menu start on Windows has. You can see the menu start here. It has some pinned options. That's great. Then you go to all, and it's a list, not tiles. So I think it's harder to find something. But at least it's sorted by letters alphabetically. Also on Mac, you can click on Command and Space to just enter the name of the app, click on Enter, and it'll open it. On Windows, you can do the same with the Start button by clicking on Start button, Windows button on the keyboard, or clicking on Windows and Q and typing in the name. But sometimes instead of the app, it'll find some results from the internet, or just a file, not an app. It doesn't work as good as on Mac. And also one more thing, one more bonus to the app installation, which isn't really connected with that app installation, but I've just reminded myself that you don't really shut down Macs. On Windows, you probably shut down Windows pretty frequently after using it. On Windows, on macOS, you just put your Mac to sleep most of the times. I know people like myself that haven't shut down their Macs for the past 5 months. It has great power performance when it's in sleep mode, and it's just faster to use it that way. Whereas on Windows, it just uses more power in sleep mode than macOS does, so it's better to shut it down so it doesn't waste power, but it takes more time to turn it on, and it closes all of the windows on the screen, so you need to reopen them later. Now let's go to system updates. So macOS updates are less frequent and more unified, but they are reliable, whereas on Windows they are more frequent. There's way more updates. You can update drivers, you can update system, you can update some security patches and more, and you can even stumble across 50 drivers needing to be installed at the same time, and you can go to the settings after a month and stumble across 30 new updates, and it just feels more intrusive for most of the users. Then hardware stuff. macOS is only available from Apple computers. That's in the macOS license, and you can make a Hackintosh or just a virtual machine on Windows, but it's not too legal. I just can't guarantee if it's legal, because the license says it's not, and you really shouldn't do that. Also, it just won't work well, so if you want macOS to work well, you should get an Apple device. And Windows is available on most of PCs. You can install it on most of the devices. Maybe Windows 11 has a higher requirements than it should, so you can't really install it on everything, but some older Windows versions will run on basically anything. Now, file system. So macOS uses APFS or HFS Plus file system, and Windows uses NTFS, and the only thing that it affects is basically it's basically the compatibility between some external drives. So if you add a file onto your external drive on macOS, then it may not be readable on Windows unless that drive is formatted with exFAT file system, which isn't really default, but it's available on both of these systems. So that's what you should do if you're using both of these systems. Or if you're sharing some files between, like if you're sharing your external drive with someone that has a different system than you, then you should use the exFAT because it's the most universal. Now the default apps. So macOS comes with Safari, iMessage for messaging that you can connect to your iPhone. I'm gonna talk about that later. Or Mail, Apple Mail, Apple Intelligence, iCloud, and FaceTime. I'm gonna talk about them more, but first I'm gonna list the Windows things. So you get the Edge browser, Outlook for mail, Copilot for AI chat, and OneDrive, then Teams. And first let's talk about the browsers, Safari and Edge. And I think it's something just preference-based, opinions-based, because I personally prefer the Safari way more. It's more reliable and not as intrusive, especially if you turn it on for the first time. What I mean by that, I often like have laptops that I turn on for the first time. That's my job. And when I open Edge, it asks me like 5 different things that I can't skip, and I can't even close the app if I don't want to answer these questions, which I hate. And on Safari, I can just open Safari and it works. Then iMessage is just a messaging app that isn't available on Windows, so there's nothing to compare. Mail and Outlook, I think that mail apps aren't really as important because I still use gmail.com on the websites, so I don't really care about that. Then Apple Intelligence and Copilot. Copilot has, they are pretty different. Copilot is cloud-based and is a large language model, which is made for things as ChatGPT is. So it can give you answers to different questions that you may have. It can generate different forms of text or even images. And Apple Intelligence is processed on device, which is more secure and doesn't require internet in most cases. But if you want an answer that is more an answer to a question, then it'll either search it up and give you links, or it can ask ChatGPT for you, which means that it'll still use like the third-party tool, which is ChatGPT, if you set it up, because you need to set up the ChatGPT in settings first so Apple Intelligence can use it. And so it's just something that Apple Intelligence is great for performing tasks on your laptop, like scheduling some tasks or maybe reading some content. I mean, you can ask it for the weather or your last note, or it can summarize some messages that you've gotten, which this function is unavailable on Windows, since Copilot is its own app that doesn't work across the full system. It only works within the apps it's embedded to, so it can't summarize messages. And now let's talk about iCloud and OneDrive. iCloud and OneDrive are pretty similar, but iCloud gives you an option to backup the whole device. You'll probably need to buy additional storage because it gives you 5 gigabytes by default for free. So if you buy more, then you'll probably be able to backup your full drive onto the iCloud. So if you get a new MacBook, or if something happens to your Mac and you just get a new one, or it gets fixed, but then all the files get corrupted, then you can restore the backup fully. And on OneDrive, it only can sync like 5 folders that you can select on the drive, so it doesn't really do much. Now FaceTime and Teams, I think Teams are more widely used since some work environments do use Teams for some online work and online meetings. FaceTime, I think, is more used for like friends talk, but a big advantage of FaceTime is that you don't need to, I think you don't need to have an account. You can just, first of all, someone needs to start FaceTime on an Apple device. Then you can either invite your Apple user friends, or you can also invite someone using a link to that meeting. And on Teams, you need to have an account, and you need to have Teams application, I think, as well. Now, app closing. So on Mac and on Windows, it's quite different. If you have one or several windows of an app opened on Windows, then if you close all of them, after you close the last of them, the app gets closed in most of the cases, unless it's an app like Steam or something like that that has its functionality to run in the background. Then it runs in the system tray on the bottom taskbar. And on macOS, it depends on an app, but in most apps, in like 96%, 98% of the apps, when you close the last window of the app, it persists opened. And at first, fresh macOS users may get a bit scared because they think that it still uses resources, but it doesn't really use any, so you don't need to worry about it. But it has a big advantage, like you can still switch to that app even if it doesn't have any window opened using Command and Tab on your keyboard. And since macOS has universal menu bar, which is at the top, and it's like the global one, and depends on the app you're focused on, dependent on the app you're focused on, it'll set some different actions at the top. Most probably there will be things like file, edit, view, window, or help. I'm actually gonna show you that so you know what I mean. You can see it right here at the top. This is the universal menu bar, and you can see I have Finder open right now, but if I open any other app, like let's say System Settings, then I will have System Settings stuff here, as you can see, and it just depends on the app I'm focused on, so you can refocus onto that app back by Command and Tab, which lets you, for example, create a new document, or just reduce some options, or go to the settings of that app with the universal top bar, whereas on Windows you need to have that app open, because if you close it, then it's fully closed. And also if you fully close it, then if you quit it, then it will take longer to turn it on again. Whereas on Mac, if your app is opened in the background all the time, and it still doesn't really use resources, but it takes way less to open. It just turns on like immediately if it's already turned on, and you just open a new window of that app. So it's a pretty different concept on Windows and macOS, and it's pretty hard to explain. But if you have tried both of these systems, then you'll probably know. And of course, you can quit apps if you really want by right-clicking on them and clicking on quit. I think that there's also like Command and Q shortcut which you can use to quit the app. But I don't use it unless it's an app that I just want to open once, and I know I won't use it for like next 3 days. Now let's talk about security. So macOS is obviously way more secure, with more app restrictions and fewer viruses. And fewer viruses are because of the app restrictions, but also because of the lower market share than Windows. Now, keyboard shortcuts. On macOS, you have Command, Option, and Control key, which control key isn't really used anymore as much. Historically, Apple mice only had one button. Of course, they still do have one button, but they are touch now. Both the Magic Mice and the trackpads. And historically, when Apple Mouse had only one button, if you wanted to do the secondary click on Windows called the right click, you needed to press on Control key on your keyboard and the key on your mouse at the same time. Now you can just use 2 fingers to tap on the touchpad and it clicks with a secondary click. Or you can set up your Apple Mouse to right click with the right portion of the mouse, or you can also right click with the left portion. It's up to you. But the command and option, they may be a bit like difficult at the very first days of using macOS if you're switching from Windows, because they are in different places. Command works like Control, but Control on Windows is on the bottom left corner, and Command is like the 4th button from the left on the bottom row. But I got used to it and I don't really care now. Also, for ones that use some keyboard layouts that include diacritics that are not on the keyboard itself, and you need to use the Alt key. On Windows, you can only do that, in most cases, only do that with the right Alt, the so-called Alt-GR on most of these keyboard layouts. On macOS, you always can use either right or left option key for that matter. And the last thing, I think that's talked about a lot when it comes to macOS and Windows, is continuity across ecosystem of different other devices. So Windows doesn't really work too well with other devices. With Android, you can pair it so it shares some messages or some photos, some files and stuff, but I don't really like this feature. It doesn't work too consistently and too smoothly. Also, you don't have things like universal clipboard or iPhone mirroring, which are available on macOS. So on macOS, you can share calls. So if someone calls you, it'll be displayed both on your iPhone and Mac, and if you have other Apple devices, they will also display that, like iPads or Apple Watches. So you can answer to that call either from your iPhone or from your Mac, and it'll just transmit all of the data to your iPhone, but you'll hear the sounds on your Mac, and you'll also the microphone from Mac will be used, but you can also simply with one button transfer the voice call back to your iPhone. On Windows, you don't really do that, honestly. Then with continuity, you also have the universal clipboard, as I said. So if you copy something on your iPhone, you can paste it immediately on the macOS. It's unavailable on Windows, and there's way more into that. And let me know in the comments down below if some of these things are like very important for you, or maybe you just don't care about other of them, and let me know which OS is for you. That's all for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. See you next time.